Hey guys, it's DeedyDeed. I'm finally back with a new podcast episode for DeedyDeed's podcast. This is going to be episode number 12. I'm kind of debating on a podcast name right now. Like, I know that's been the biggest thing for me, generally speaking, is like the idea of what my podcast name is or what it will officially be. I already explained that, the whole not really a podcast title. As much as I would want to, I feel like that would be kind of almost the perfect name for it. I don't want to blatantly take that from one of my favorite content creators who that's what she names her podcast. Like, she calls her wrestling podcast that she reviews and stuff like that, she calls those not really a podcast. So I just feel like I don't want to blatantly take that title from her, at least without asking or acknowledging that with her. Because, for her to just randomly, not that she would even come across any of my podcasts or videos, but I'm just saying if anyone were to notice, like, someone else has already been using this name, whether it's her or any followers, I just feel like, you don't want to be no fake bitch like that, basically, okay? So it's just like, that's her name, that's what she came up with, that was her unique creative idea for coming up like with the name of her reviews and podcasts. So I just feel like I don't want to take that from her. It was cute for like the first, 10 episodes, but now I just feel like it's time to move on to something else. So, honey, if I'm plain Jane, I got to just call it DeedyDeed's podcast. Well, then guess what? That's what it's going to be for now. But there is a name that I'm kind of sitting on. I feel like it's basic, but it's one that someone kind of gave to me where they said they felt like, I guess it would fit. But I think I'm kind of grappling with the idea of thinking that it may be too generic. So I'm already running my mouth for 2 minutes. Y'all know how I can get, I guess. So I'm going to just get into the podcast itself and the topic. So basically, this may be boring for, like I said, some of you guys, but, I told you guys before, like, how big I am on the X-Men and stuff like that. So I feel like, that's kind of my focus at the moment. That's where I am mentally, the space that I'm in, like, creatively, as far as, like, passion and interest, just something I'm kind of, like, dedicating myself to currently, the project that I spoke on in the previous episode of X-Men The Evolution, a retcon of X-Men 3. So I'm basically back today to discuss more of that. Basically kind of give you guys more of an insight or peek into the concept I'm attempting to build. Because I feel like in the previous episode, I just kind of discussed the general idea of how we got here, like the general idea or consensus of like the X-Men film series, how it's controversial, some people love it, some people hate it, whether they're casuals or hardcores. And, I basically just kind of gave an overview of like how X1 and X2 established the groundwork, and then X3 kind of started the pattern of fans becoming disappointed, generally when it comes to like the results of the films and all of that. So basically I kind of explained that to get to the avenue of how I'm taking that opportunity based on how I know fans felt about the third original X-Men film. I'm taking the opportunity to try and retcon that or retell that story in a way that is more satisfying for fans of that film trilogy and series like me. I grew up, watching the X-Men film trilogy and series, so it's definitely something that is near and dear to my heart. I know there's probably plenty of people who feel like, what genuine purpose does this serve, or like, why do you care about retconning a movie that's 20 years old at this point, especially when the X-Men are basically about to get reintroduced in like a whole nother way in the MCU universe. I understand that, that may be a thought of a lot of people, but I mean, that doesn't matter. Like I said, it's something near and dear to me. A movie that I was specifically excited to see as a kid growing up. And I just think that this would create a sort of closure for me, but not just me, hopefully other like-minded X-Men fans who would just see the fun in a retcon like this. So that's basically just the point of it. Now, obviously, I don't know how far this can go. Like I've said previously, I feel like I mentioned this before. I'm not like necessarily trying to get, I would say like this worldwide recognition from this, or like I'm not trying to get paid from the story, or I'm not trying to get into any legal trouble, okay, where a motherfucker's trying to sue me for copyright or make it seem like, I'm doing this and doing it. Hey, listen, I don't even mind crediting certain people, if need be when that time comes, if things do get that far. But the main purpose of me doing this is for fun. It's for entertainment. It's not to try to disrespect anybody's work or dismiss it, whatever. It's just like I'm doing this because this is something that I'm creatively inspired to do. And I feel like it's something that I've almost drove myself just crazy in general, wondering about. Like, I think it's always kind of been nagging or poking at the creative side in me, like the curious side of me, like what could have been, what would the original vision of X-Men 3 have turned into, or like what would that story look like had it been fully developed. So I just feel like, the fan that I am, I'm taking that time to dedicate the patience and care to that concept and try and bring it to life. So I mentioned before that, I feel like there's this idea when it comes to the end of X2, like it was obviously building and hinting and leading to the Phoenix Saga, right? And not even just the very end of the film, because, I know that that's like the reference point and I get it because of the final frames, but it's just like the whole movie itself, like that was kind of like a subplot, not even like a hard subplot, but like it was clearly a part of the character Jean Grey's arc in the film. Like the whole thing was like building toward her evolution. So, I feel like there's this narrative or there's this idea sometimes with X-Men fans where they like to, because they were so disappointed by The Last Stand, they, say different things like, oh, well, they should have never even touched the Phoenix Saga in the third film. And it's like, well, let's not go that far, because that's like kind of ridiculous, in my opinion, to come to that conclusion. Because anytime, like my thing is, if you truly understand the X-Men mythology, the story of Jean Grey, anytime that she dies or sacrifices her life, like that is the point of it. You know what I mean? Is that she is supposed to return eventually. And I mean, sure, I guess you can play with the idea of whether, she technically needs to return immediately, or if it does need to be told immediately in the next film. I mean, for me, I just think naturally it makes sense that the next film would, at least be dedicated to the Phoenix Saga to some degree, because it's like, it's the next chapter after Jean Grey died. You get what I'm saying? So it's just like the idea of keeping her dead for the entire next film is just kind of like strange to me. I mean, sure, I guess it could have technically worked depending on, I guess the vision or, however the story was told. Like, I guess it could have worked, but X2 already kind of pigeonholed themselves and put themselves in a position where it was kind of like they had to somehow honor the Phoenix story, because that's what the previous story was hinting at. So I feel like, because, time is going, I do just kind of want to get to the main point I want to express. And that's this version of Phoenix that I plan on adapting for this version of the story, right? So obviously, if I'm retconning the original X-Men 3, I feel like with that, there should obviously be some major changes. And while I am still, telling the Phoenix story, it's about telling the Phoenix story in a way that basically is almost like basically completely different. So for X-Men The Last Stand, I feel like, the Phoenix's character was framed almost as like a split personality, like some sort of schizophrenic mental condition that Jean had to, that needed to be controlled. And it's this idea that with the, like the split personality, it also wielded like all of her latent power. Like, however powerful she truly was, it was really underlying, and somehow connected with this personality of hers, this alternate personality, where, she's basically just pure evil. And, the way Professor describes the Phoenix in that film, she's all desire, joy, rage. It's just like, she's more instinctual, than conscious, I guess you can say. And, I feel like that concept wasn't even, I think, as bad as some people may have thought. I don't even think it was the concept itself that people didn't like. I think it was more of the execution. If they wanted to go with that direction of, hey, we're just going to skip, Phoenix being heroic, and we're just going to frame it as like, this basically mental or personality condition that she needed to be contained for years. That technically could have worked. But I just think if the presentation was better, or if there was more of an opportunity for that specific side of Jean to be further delved into, that could have been just better on camera, or just, presented as like a better story for the film. But this version of Phoenix is more so just going to focus on the idea of the scale and the scope of her evolution and power. So, I feel like I'm borrowing the same element, which, really comes from source material, like not even just The Last Stand. The whole idea of Jean having mental barriers or psychic barriers in her mind that are placed by Professor Xavier to basically control or like maintain her latent power, or power that she wasn't able to fully manage and control. So that's the concept that I'm going for, is that basically, it's still going to be that, like, her powers were capped behind psychic barriers that contained her and it for most of her life. But, the Alkali Lake situation completely released it when she sacrificed her life. And the adaptation, I feel like, is really coming from, I want to be clear about this, the Ultimate X-Men universe framework, the comics, because I know that the Phoenix is originally considered a cosmic entity that comes from space, but some hardcore fans that love to jump on this topic and correct every fan that they possibly can about who they feel the Phoenix truly is, they forget that the story is told in multiple ways. It's been told in different universes, and there is a universe where Phoenix is essentially an extension of Jean. An extension of Jean, her latent power being connected to the Phoenix that's always been within her. Almost like a psychological condition that she does have to maintain. So it's almost like a happy medium between the cosmic Phoenix and the Phoenix that we got to see in The Last Stand, in the sense of it always being something internal. But that's the idea I'm going for with this concept as well, is that the Phoenix is internal, but the Phoenix in this version is not an alternate personality. It's just simply Jean unleashed, as far as like just her power in itself, its potential. But it's not a personality. It's not going to alter her personality in the sense of like just making her pure evil. So that's like the basic concept that I wanted to get out there for you guys, as far as like knowing which version or like what type of Phoenix I'm attempting to go for or tell the story of here. Like, it's not the cosmic version in the sense of like, coming from space, or it's not the Last Stand's version where it's like, it's the split personality where her power is unleashed through the split personality and she's just evil and hates everyone. Like, I'm not retelling those stories. I'm just telling the story of what will be Jean's natural evolution. And I do want to get into it a bit more, but I've said before that, I kind of like to keep these podcasts at like 15 or so minutes. So I do just want to stop this one here. And if anything, I might have to do like a part 2 and a part 3. But I just basically want to, before I get into any other specifics of the story, the heart of the story will be me attempting to retell the Phoenix Saga. And like I say, even like elements of the Dark Phoenix Saga. So I just feel like before I do that, I want, potential audiences, fans, listeners, viewers, to have an understanding, at least first, of the concept that I'm going for when it comes to Phoenix itself, the Phoenix story, character, and just how this version of the character is going to be expressed and explained in this story. So, thank you guys for listening, whoever listens, and I will be back with the next part.